Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm Bill Fralin, as she said, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the topic, and I was just going over just before, protecting parents' assets, what children need to know. One of the reasons, first off, you start with why are we even concerned with this issue? And one of the reasons is that, and I brought a visual guide, it's called the Guide to Retirement Living. This has every facility in the Washington metro area, neighborhood by neighborhood, and it shows the daily rate. And what I normally do when I speak and start to start, we'll look at a facility that's close. So Cherrydale is down Lee Highway, 3710, and the daily rate for the skilled level of care at Cherrydale is between $360 and $393 per day. And also the dirty little secret is it's a la carte. So all the Band-Aids, all the aspirin, all the other equipment and items they use go on top of that number that I just gave you. So the problem is that the cost of long-term care is staggering. And it's a relatively new problem because 50 years ago, because of our diet, because of our lifestyles, because of we had yet to advance the advances we've made in medicine, people did not live this long. They had strokes, they had heart attacks, and it was not an issue. But again, the fastest growing segment of our population now is I think people over 80. There's a good stat out there. Someone can Google it. But the fact is that we're living longer. We're living much longer, and what the issue with living much longer is we're living longer with chronic conditions. Dementia, Alzheimer's, Lou Gehrig's, stroke victims, all of these things, we can continue to live, but again, the care that's affiliated with this, the cost can be staggering. So one of the things we want to do tonight is try to find out what options do we have and what's available to address this. Because having done this for over 20 years, the three areas I've found is that most people in doing their plans and thinking about these issues, they want the three things that I've seen consistently is I don't want to be institutionalized, I don't want to die broke, and I don't want to be a burden on my loved ones. I think that's universally. I've even visited a friend of mine who is an attorney in Seattle, and again, he encounters the same issues. So the first and most important thing, if you take nothing else from what you get tonight, is you have to have a properly drawn power of attorney. Because a power of attorney it's a financial power of attorney, and this is a document that gives you, it conveys decision-making authority. And it's not just the one you get off LegalZoom. I call it LegalDoom because that one does not have the specific language that you need. Because I'm friends with most of the trust and estate attorneys in the area, and most of the powers of attorneys they will say, look, you can, one of the provisions they have, it says you can make gifts up to a certain amount. The annual exclusion currently under tax law is $14,000. So an individual can give out $14,000 per person, or up to $28,000 for a married couple. And there's no limit on that. You can go through the phone book, write the checks out. But a lot of practitioners will put that in, and while that's helpful for estate planning, what happens when you pass? The planning we're talking about here is what about when you're alive? When your mother or father are alive, how do we get good care? Well, my goal is securing good care and maintaining good care. One of the primary means by which I do that is preserving assets. Because I never represent the children, we represent the senior. And so if I preserve the assets under the rules that they have, then I have resources that I can use so that if we need care, we can access it and still have additional funds so we can do the add-ons, the enhancements that are going to provide the better quality of care, the better oversight, and the more consistent care. So the financial power of attorney with the ability to make gifts without limit is critical. Because again, because there's three ways to pay for this long-term care. One is to private pay self-insure, which is a plan of about 98% of America. That just says, well, I'm not planning on getting sick, and if I do, I'll just write checks. That's the plan of most America. And if you're lucky enough to have a heart attack in your sleep at 100, congratulations, you win. The problem is if you have one of those debilitating conditions I spoke about earlier, stroke, and the ones I see a lot, stroke, broken hip, dementia, Alzheimer's, if any of those occur, then the planning changes. The landscape underneath what you're doing changes from estate planning, because we know what to do when Bill dies. We give his money away, we pay his taxes, and we bury him. But what happens while he's alive, and how do we make sure that we get the good care? So the one way to pay for that cost of care, the one that I just mentioned from the Guide to Retirement Living, is private pay self-insure. The second means by which to do so is long-term care insurance. Now, I don't sell long-term care insurance, but what I do is when the family comes in on Monday morning saying, Bill, Mom's lived in the house in Annandale for 50 years, and she's hard-headed and won't listen to any of us. Over the weekend, she fell and broke her hip. And because she has dementia, she can't follow directions. She's unable to rehab and to get better because she can't follow what the therapist says to do, move, walk. And because of that, she went from 50 years of independent living to requiring that skilled nursing down at Cherrydale, which we just ran off, which on average in the Washington metro area is over $10,000 a month. So even if you've done well, and even if you've saved your funds and you've listened to your financial person and you put your money away monthly, at the end of life, it can drain, I've seen it many, many times, drain all the funds from the family. And not only that, to add injury to insult, the care can be mediocre. So long-term care insurance is an insurance that when I get sick, and the standard is when I require assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living, grooming, bathing, eating, toileting, etc. Because I have a client here in Arlington. She is a yoga teacher, and I think she's 94, and she's more flexible than I am. So I said to her, Yvonne, I said, the good news is you're in great shape. The bad news is I can't get Medicaid for you, and that's the good news because you don't need it. And so you have to have, in order to access the long-term care or one of the entitlements which we're going to talk about, you need to require assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. That's a term they use in the business. They're called ADLs. It's those things that you and I do every day that we don't even think about. We get up, brush our teeth, put our shoes on, go to work, answer the phone. All those activities of daily living, if we need assistance with it, then that insurance will kick in. So that's the second way to pay. Now, the third way to pay are the entitlement programs, and there's essentially 3. There's VA, the Veterans Administration, and that the VA, if you were in the service and you were active during one day of wartime, and again, you can Google up the times. I mean, Vietnam, the Gulf War, they count. If you were in the service and active during those times, one of the programs that's available is aid and attendance. Now, this is a pension supplement program that says if your medical bills exceed your cost of care, then they will give you a pension supplement that comes monthly that will help you pay that difference. And also, too, how the veterans benefits works, too. If you are a veteran and you have a service-related illness, see, they have 1,000 programs. And if you have a service-related illness, you go to the top of the list. But even if you don't have a service-related illness, like this aid and attendance that I'm mentioning, it's still an available benefit. So if you have a military person in the family, you want to be aware of that, and in your planning, consider that. Say, oh, by the way, Dad was a Marine, or Mom was with the whichever branch she happened to be with. It's just one of the places that you look to say the alternatives, other than the other 2 options, which are the private pay and the long-term care insurance. So VA, if you're a vet, it's something worthy of consideration. The second entitlement program is Medicare. Now, Medicare is an insurance created by the Great Society programs in 1965, and it's insurance that says for people over 65 or people under 65, Medicaid is an insurance program. Part A is if I have to go to the hospital, it pays for the hospitalization. Part B is outpatient doctor visits. I go see my doctor, get my health, get my tests, that sort of thing. Part C is an HMO model where, for example, Kaiser would run your Medicare benefits, and you can opt in, and they do a lot of administrative work for you. And Part D is your drug benefit. But which of those four mentioned long-term care? Well, that's right, none of them did. Well, actually, they fall under Part A. They have a program under the hospitalization. Medicare has a program that how it works is if you have spent 3 days, you've gone to a hospital and you have what they call 3 overnights. You've been there at midnight 3 days in a row. Then you're eligible under the Medicare program for up to 100 days of rehabilitative care. See, and the goal of this program is to get Bill better. The goal is to improve me so that I can live independently. And the government pays the facilities of this very, very well. They're willing to put some money up front to say, if we can get Bill better, the good news is he's better, and the good news for us is we're not paying. So as such, if you get the 3 days in a facility, and a dirty little trick that they play is when you go to the hospital, you can be in the hospital for 3 days, and you have a channel changer, you're laying in bed, and then they send you home and say, oh, you weren't admitted. You were simply here under observation. So when you do go in a hospital, you want to say, have I been admitted? Because most people wouldn't even know to ask this question. But if you have been admitted, then, and you get those 3 days, then under Medicare, you get up to 100 days of skilled care. And what happens is that's the maximum you will get per spell of illness. Because see, if I go the 100 days, that's the most I'm going to get for that illness. Now, if I break one leg, I get 100 days. And then if there's an intervening 60-day period, I get a second. I get another 100 days if it's a different unrelated illness. So I break the other leg, I can get another 100 days. But the problem is for paying for long-term care, 100 days helps, but it's not the answer. It helps, but it's not the answer. So if I access that program and I get to the 100 days, what happens thereafter? Well, they're not going to pay anymore, so we're back to either one of the three options, which are private pay, long-term care insurance, or the final program of the entitlements is Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is a program that is misunderstood and stereotyped to just a hard-to-fathom degree. This is the same program, part of the Great Society. It was created in 1965, and it's the only program, the only federal program that pays for long-term care. And it pays for a lot of home-care care. Over half of all the skilled nursing beds in America are paid for by Medicaid. This time Medicaid is called long-term care Medicaid. And so the long-term care Medicaid pays for over half. And why does it do that? Because, well, for most people, after you start spending the $10K a month, it's not long till you're down to what the limit in Virginia is, $2,000. So you're like, that's it? And that's it. So a lot of people say, well, there's not that $2,000, I mean, that's nothing. Why would I even consider that as an option? And so, and then the state of Virginia and all the rest of the states are very comfortable with people having that understanding of Medicaid. They want them to believe that. They are comfortable with that. Why is that? Because it keeps the rolls down. Because see, Medicaid is an entitlement program. And what that means is if you meet the rules, you get it. It's not optional. The states are required by the feds to provide this to anyone who meets their state requirements. And there's difference between jurisdictions, and I do DC, Maryland, Virginia, so They have little nuances between the two. But the fact is, if you meet the requirements, they can't say, no, Bill, we don't really like you. You're not a nice guy. We're not going to pay. They have to pay. And so in 1988, what most people don't know is in 1988, Congress, who created these rules, created the anti-impoverishment rules. And what that said was, is if Bill gets sick, his wife Kate shouldn't have to go into the poorhouse just because the poor guy had a stroke. I mean, she's done nothing wrong. And if he had cancer, guess what? Under Medicare, he went to the hospital, they can pay for that. But since he's got dementia, they don't pay for that. Because see, our medical system is called an acute care system. And what that means is, and we have a damn good acute care system. And what that means, if I trip up here today, hopefully it's not going to happen, try not to hex myself, they're going to get me to Virginia Hospital Center, have me in a splint, and I'll be home watching, whatever, Breaking Bad before 9 o'clock. They are very good. I mean, and these EMT guys, emergency medical technicians, they are gung-ho for a reason because they're going to get you to the hospital and get you, get you better. And also, hospitals are paid on the prospective payer system. I think it's the same term. So they get paid. So if I go to a hospital, they get, I have a broken leg, they get X. Say it's $100. And they get $100 if I'm there 3 days, if I'm there 1 day. So what do you think their incentive is? They want to get, it's sicker and quicker. They want to get you out sicker and quicker. And so, and again, most of the times this is discharged to a skilled nursing facility. Because see, they're there to provide the chronic care. And a lot of the new Affordable Care Act is putting more pressure on hospitals to say, if you have a readmit, we're going to penalize you for it. And so there's a lot of pressure on them to get people in, get them out, and make sure they don't come back. And so if you have, but if you have the wrong illness, all of a sudden, then the rules are different. And so what Congress is, Congress in '88 said, we're going to create a statute called the Anti-Impoverishment Statute. Because it used to be, you had to spend it all down, husband and wife, to $2,000. And you're like, well, what's my wife going to do? I mean, she can live in a car. I mean, a car's exempt. So I guess she can live in the car, and maybe she can buy a comforter with that. And so what they did is they set the rules, and see, the rules are far more favorable for married couples. And the reason, and so what happens is see, if I'm sick, they're going to let Kate keep the house, regardless of value. I could have the biggest house in Arlington worth $3 million. It's an exempt asset. And as long as the healthy spouse is living there, you get to keep a primary residence. You don't get to keep a vacation home, don't get to keep a lake house, but you get to keep a primary residence. And so if she is in that, I have this, I have the stroke, need the care, then what would happen is that we'd say, first off, well, the house is exempt. And so we got a house, we say we've got an $800,000 house. It's probably not an unreasonable number for Arlington. And say, oh, wait a minute, but we still have a mortgage of $300,000 on it. Well, the wife's allowed to keep the house. She's allowed to keep one car. She's allowed to keep the contents of the home, the tangible personal property, jewelry, china, furniture, clothing, etc. She's allowed to keep the funeral space spots. And also there's another thing a spouse gets to keep. It's called a Community Spouse Resource Allowance. CRESPA is the acronym. And what that is they say she can keep the house, and also she can keep anywhere from $20,000 up to $120,000 in assets to keep her in the community. Because if you have a house, if you're a homeowner, Arlington likes their tax money, and your insurance guy likes his premiums. So it costs money to stay in the community. So they've said, if we cut this back too far, we're going to Kate's going to end up where the same place Bill is, with us paying for it. So they created the Community Spouse Resource Allowance, which lets Kate keep up to $120,000. Also, too, Kate's income, the well spouse's income, doesn't count. She could, she could make $500,000 a year. And if it comes, and then the business is called name on a check roll. The check comes in and says Kate Fralin on it, it doesn't matter. And that's another planning opportunity. But see, first off, the house is, so let's just use the example on the house. Let's say I have the stroke, I need the care, That is, we have the house, it's $800,000 house, we owe $400,000. Well, we got a brokerage account with $450,000 in it over here at wherever, Merrill Lynch, pick some place. An easy strategy would be just to pay off the mortgage, because the house is exempt, correct? So we pay off the mortgage. She's not paying a mortgage, and she's got, and then she gets to keep up to $120,000. We apply for Bill, and see, once they apply for me, my care for life is paid for. Because, I mean, the average stay in a skilled nursing facility in America is 3.2 years. I mean, everyone knows an aunt who's been there for 10 years, but the average is I think it's 2.3, excuse me, I got that backwards. I got a little dyslexic. I think it's 2.3 years is the average. And so, once you get that approval letter, and again, it comes from the county. They do it county by county. You apply in your Department of Social Services. And once you have that letter, that person, grandma, grandpa, Bill, Kate, their care for life is paid for. And that includes pharmaceuticals, room and board, everything, all inclusive.
Medicaid, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Medicare is the insurance. Medicaid is the program for long-term care. It's the only program we have. So if she paid off the mortgage, then all of a sudden she's eligible. But let's say she pays off the mortgage, and let's say she's got her $120,000, but we still have $300,000. Medicaid is going to say, wait a minute, Kate, you could spend that money to pay for Bill's care, couldn't you? And you're going to. And if you're not well advised, that's what people do. But Congress created an exemption, what's called a Medicaid qualified annuity. So I could take that $300,000, I could convert it into an immediate annuity to my wife. So remember, her income doesn't count. So if it comes to her, and I make it short for a year, so she gets it all back over 12 months, and provided she lives through that 12 months, she keeps the money, because it's income, no longer countable. I'm on Medicaid, we've saved all the funds. And see, saving the funds, I'm not, as I said before, I don't care about the kids' inheritance. If they get one, that's fine. But as an advocate for seniors, I want to preserve those funds, because there's a lot you can do with those funds. I mean, if I preserve funds, I can have a kid come in, a college student come in and read Dad the Washington Post for an hour a day, $15 a day. It adds tremendously to Dad's quality of life. Not a big expense. Or if the therapy runs out with Medicare, and I still think Kate's doing pretty well and she might benefit from it, I can spend the money to get that additional care. Or if I'm in a facility, Emeritus over here, someone mentioned that earlier, it's over on Clarendon, I think. If I'm not happy there and want to go to another place, I've got the funds by which to say, well, I'm not happy with your services, I'm going over here to another venue. So keep all those options open. And then too, if I want a big screen television with a headset so I can watch ESPN 24/7 and not disrupt the whole place, those are kind of things you can expend the funds on to get care. And so with a married couple, you can protect, I mean, you can protect a lot of assets, a tremendous amount of assets, and a lot. But also remember, but one thing to keep in mind is the people, the eligibility workers who work for the county are trained in Richmond, D.C., and Baltimore. They're trained to say all you're allowed to do is to accept an application, and in 45 days you say yes or you say no. You can't say, well, if you did this and you shift this around, you get. They're just saying it's yes or no. You're either eligible or you aren't. And I have a case, and you can look it up, where a woman was overconsumed alcohol at age 32. Brain damage resulted. She was in a Commonwealth facility out in Fairfax. We applied for Medicaid, but because she couldn't communicate, we put all her numbers together, and she ended up with $2,028, and they denied her. And I appealed it twice, lost both times. The state has us. If you're a penny over, you're ineligible. And I've appealed up to the court level, but I'm going to still lose because the rules are such that they are correct. So that's why it's very, the eligibility, most applications are done by somebody sitting in the social services officers in the back of the legal pad, like, well, maybe I'll check this off, and they get denied. And they're like, oh, I guess I'm just not eligible. And the state wants you to believe that, because that's what they keep the rolls down. Because when January and February, when you see budget busting Medicaid, this is what they're talking about. So if you get it right, they'll give it to you, but they're not going to do you any favors. And also, too, the facilities are not going to tell you about this either, because you go to, we were talking about Cherrydale, it's right on the corner. If you private pay, they make this much. If you come in for Medicare rehab, it's a little below private pay, but it's still, they do very well. Medicaid reimbursement's down here. So a good administrator is going to try to get as much private pay as he or she can. So do they have any incentive at all saying, well, if you just put the house in her name and you did this, you're eligible? What they're going to say is, you know, Bill, it's so great to see you. And you know what? When you spend all your money down, we'll be glad. We're going to do that application for you. We're not going to charge a nickel. But we appreciate the $500,000. Thank you so much. And so they're not going to say, oh, by the way, the law permits you to do it. Because some people object. I said, wait a minute. Do you take your personal deduction on your 1040? They said, of course I do. Government lets you. I'm like, well, why, as an advocate, I want to know why you wouldn't access this. And actually, there's case law on it where lawyers who didn't do this got disciplined. They're like, you're the person advising these people. And you could have saved a substantial portion of their funds, and you didn't. Can you explain why you failed to do so? And there's even a case now, a clerk in the office found it. It's out in Manassas Healthcare Center versus a lawyer who got appointed by the court as a guardian. Well, the lawyer either didn't do or blew the Medicaid application, so that now the facility's chewing the lawyer for $130,000, saying if you were good at what you did and did it correctly, we would have been approved. We would at least got the Medicaid paid. We didn't even get that, so you're on the hook. And I think they got him. So it's the state's not going to do you any favors. The facility's not going to do you any favors, and and because people stereotype it so much. Oh, it's for poor people in bad places. I've had people on Medicaid at the Goodwin House. I've had them at what's the place? Methodist Home in Washington. See, 98% of the facilities take they take private pay, they take Medicare rehab, and they take Medicaid. So this guy, the guy to retirement living, and I will leave these here and I'll pass them around too. I'm going to hold up for the camera. This is a free publication that the Washington Post puts out. And so it's got all the facilities in the area, their costs. It goes county by county. It's a great resource, and it's free. So you can get on the mailing list and have them send this to you. And so, and it tells you, if you look through it, it says whether they take Medicaid or not. So, there's a handful that don't. And those facilities are called what are called CCRCs, Continuing Care Retirement Communities. Green Spring Village, anybody heard of that? Goodwin House, CCRC. The Virginian is a CCRC. There's a handful that what happens is you pay a large upfront deposit, and I've seen it as high as $500,000. When I was about to say, I guess I'm not getting in here. And you pay that money, and then over time, you're locked in. They have what's called a continuum of care, meaning you will be here for the rest of your life. You will start in a cottage, and then you can go to an apartment, and then you go to sort of a memory care, and then you go to skill care. And it's a nice option. These are nice places, and they do a good job, but they're not cheap. And so for some people, it's the right option. But if this is the kind of homework that you got to do to say, what's going to work for my mom? What's going to work for my dad or aunt, uncle, whatever the case may be? But 97% of them take the other ones, because they only take 100% private pay. But again, they're a small minority of the facilities. So there's plenty. So the stereotype, you're not going to get good care on Medicaid is just that. It's a stereotype. I probably have 100, 200 people now that are on Medicaid and are getting excellent care. And they're in good facilities. You can still get in good facilities too. But the greatest indicator of care that you get is the involvement of family, friends, and advocates. Because if I go to Goodwin House, which is the gold standard, it's a lovely place, and nobody comes, and nobody visits, and there's no oversight, I mean, I might get good care. They might like me, but they might not. And if they're busy, they just, he'll be fine. And so, but on the other hand, if my family's in there often, or a social worker, or a geriatric care manager, or these people are checking, they're going to pay more attention. It really is that simple, because particularly, because most of these facilities, they're understaffed, and people are overworked and don't get a lot of appreciation. And so they do the best they can. And so, but the ones, if they know that the family's going to be in later today, and I know they're going to have questions, let's start with this guy. Let's start with this lady. And make sure, let's get that one right first. And so, and again, I tell families, I said, look, it's not an adversarial role for the families. The families are there. Your role is to be a nice guy. Bring in donuts, ask them about their kids, treat them with respect, and guess what? They respond well. Because I've literally asked, and I do this every time I go to a facility, I said, if you had any advice to give to a family how to get good care for their loved one, I said, what is it? And almost universally, they're like, be nice. Just be a nice person. Thank somebody. And so, because again, there's a lot of advocacy we can do, and that's I do it all day, but that's a starting point. And so, because you go in, you find out who's at the nurse's station. Who are these people? Thank them for what they're doing. Here's my information. I really appreciate what you're doing for my mom. And make sure you bring in the box of, $5 box of cookies at Giant, it's the best investment you ever make. So by having, and see, if you have funds, you can have advocates involved. Because there are geriatric care managers, which are frequently they're nurses who have worked with geriatrics for 20 years, and you can hire them to go by and check the file, go to the care meetings, make sure things are supposed to be the way they're supposed to be. And so if you have funds, you can access that. But if you have not planned and not protected those funds, you just simply, I hope they like me. And so that's why preserving the funds is something that should be, this case has got to be made to me, and it hasn't in 20 plus years, why you wouldn't preserve these funds. But in order to preserve these funds, you need the ability to do the planning as the rules permit. Because see, if you don't have a power of attorney, Bill has a stroke, can't just go in and say, well, I'm all those bank accounts and bills, I'm going to close out and put in my name. Because you're going to get a call from Adult Protective Services saying, Kate, how long have you been ripping Bill off? And you say, well, no, it's really not the case. I'm actually, I'm helping him. Sure you are. The fact is that's why you have the power of attorney saying, I have the ability to make gifts to my agent, who's my wife, and it's not a breach of fiduciary duty. It's consistent with my wishes to do asset protection planning. And so by having that there, you have the authority and the ability to do it. And then you can see the rule, and once you have that, that is you get nothing else. You get that power of attorney with the ability to make gifts without limit between spouses, or gifts without limits to irrevocable trust. Because see, how Medicaid works is you apply, and if you require assistance for two or more activities of daily living, and the sick person has less than $2,000 in their name, you get it. And so. But what happens thereafter to the funds that my wife has in her name doesn't matter. She could win the lot. She could go to 7-Eleven and win the lottery the next day. Doesn't matter for my eligibility. Now, if she gets sick, that's another issue for another lecture. But there's things she can do too. But see, when you apply for Medicaid, if you are having two activities a daily living and you're under the $2,000, you're eligible. But one of the rules, one of the things with the application you get is what's called a 5-year look back. And what that is, it's a question on the application that says, Bill, in the last 5 years, have you given away any assets? The answer is either yes or no. Yes, I have, or no, I haven't. Because, see, when they started this program at 65, there was no look back. So that you could say, okay, neighbor, I'm going to have you hold this for me for a couple days. I'm going to apply for Medicaid, and then we're going to go from there. And Congress said, no, wait a minute. That's not exactly what we meant. So they started out with a 2-year look back. And then they went, then years later, they went to a 3-year look back, and on January 8th of 2006, they went to a 5-year look back. So Bill and Melinda Gates, if they chose to, could give up the $50 billion away, and in 5 years and a day, you're eligible. I mean, and again, I've got a doctor who's 55 who's got a diagnosis, dementia diagnosis. He has no symptoms. He's asymptomatic. But in 5 years, he will have symptoms. So he did an irrevocable trust, took all the assets, put it into the trust. So when he gets to that point, those assets are beyond the reach. So again, it's one of the strategies out there. Or I have some clients who will buy a 5-year long-term care policy. So if they get sick, the insurance pays in the interim. They make the lump sum gift for the 5-year look back. So when the insurance is done, Medicaid picks in. So again, those are different planning things you can combine, because the goal is to, you know, if you're the sick person going in, you lose your income. Because see, if I have a pension from the federal government and I go in, the deal with Medicaid is we're going to take Bill's money, Bill's income, and then what doesn't fully pay the bill, the state of Virginia comes in and pays the balance. Now, Kate's income's okay if she's at home. I mean, she's working, her income does count, but bills we get. So you forego your income to get Medicaid, but the goal is protecting the principal. So the income, you're not going to get out of that one. But you can try to preserve the assets to do, you know, so you can do this advocacy, so you can do the things that are add to quality of life. And so by having, you know, a 5-year look back, it might be the appropriate care. Or if you apply for long-term care insurance and you're 60 and they just turn you down, you might say, well, I might consider the 5-year option so that it's available. And there's no right or wrong answer, and this is very, very fact-specific. You're like, tell me about the family, who's close, where are you going to be? All those factors, you know, what's your support system? All those things are part and parcel of which plan you choose. But starting the plan, the critical point is having your power of attorney and having a properly drawn power of attorney. Because a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I can do that. And say, but try, you know, but you want to look for someone who's done quite a few of them and understands the asset protection rules. Because there's a lot of estate planners out there, and they're good if Bill dies. But the issue happens if you get incapacitated. You need to have that language is critical. Because I think for 3 weeks in a row, I've had 3 different power of attorneys come in the door and say, you can give up to the $14K a year per person. And I said, and Dad's now incompetent. He's in the hospital. And I just said, look, we're sunk. I said, the only thing we can do, and I have this case, you go out to Fairfax and say, Your Honor, this is literally a case I have. Your Honor, I want to take the $800,000 and take it out of Mom's name and put it in Son's name so we can stiff the state for the Medicaid bill. I hope you're okay with that, Your Honor. I'm going to be a little more diplomatic than that. But the fact of the matter is, it's the substance of the argument. And the rules let you do it. The rules let you do it, but if you have power of attorney, you supersede the need for that. I have already locked in that decision-making authority, and if it happens, we just sit down and say, okay, what's the plan? Which way are we going to go? If we don't have it, we're like, well, maybe we can get a guardianship. But the guardianships are costly, they're expensive, and also they're a nasty proceeding. There's 3 lawyers, and they're all testifying Bill's crazy for the following reason. And if the judge agrees with all of them testifying that Bill's crazy, then I lose my rights and I become essentially a child again. And someone else is vested with control over me. And also, too, one of the symptoms of dementia is paranoia. So I've seen cases where kids have had to get on a stand and testify. Dad walks around without his shirt on and out in the front yard, and just evidence the fact that Dad's not competent. And you think that he's already in a bad mental state. When you're hearing that in a courtroom, it can forever shatter a family harmony. And that's a hard way to do it. That's why I say the power of attorney is critical. And again, the other documents are important too. The healthcare power of attorney to make medical decisions, your estate plan, all that's important too. But for the asset protection planning, the critical document is that financial power of attorney. And so, and also too, if you're talking to your parents, it's a better approach. Because if you come in and say, well, Dad, how's the will going? He's going to say, you greedy little punk. But if you say, Dad, do you have a power of attorney? Because if you don't have it, Arlington, go get a guardianship, and they're in charge of your life. Are you okay with that? Most dads aren't. They're like, no, hell no, this is my money. I'm going to be in charge. And so that's how, because some people say my parents would never do it. I said, well, you got to frame it correctly to them, saying, do you want to keep your money? And I've yet to have the response, no, Bill, no more for me, thanks, I'm just fine. Do you want to make your own decisions? No, Bill, I'm not so big on that. You go ahead, make a pick. And you want to stay as independent as long as you can. I'll say, look, we can help you do all those things, but we need authority. And either you can give it to us, or we have to later down the road when you're sick, go to court and get it. So getting that power of attorney is critical. And also, too, you also have a power of attorney, too, because the planning for, we talked about married people, but there's also a plan for a single person. Because see, the rules I told you are more favorable to married people. However, you can still, with a single person in every single case, save 40% of those assets you haven't already spent. So if I have $400,000 in the bank, I have the stroke tomorrow, they take me down to Cherrydale, and I have my power of attorney in place, and I have the ability to do the planning that we're talking about here. In the worst case scenario, I can save $100,000 of that $400,000. That's the word. That's the Eeyore, rain all day. The worst thing. All the facts are terrible. You can go. That percentage can go up and higher based on a number of factors. But 40 you can get every single time. And the strategy is called gift and cure. Because see, when you give away that 5-year look back, see if you give that assets away. See if you give a little bit away, there's a corresponding period of ineligibility. See, Bill, bad boy, you shouldn't have given that away. And so you're not going to get it for a month. But if I give a lot of money away, then they're like, Bill, you're a really bad boy. You're not getting it for years. And so, because if it's any period less than 5 years, then they're going to do a corresponding period of ineligibility. But I could say, oh, I'm so sorry. Mistake's all mine. Let me pay it back. Or the person I gave it to gave it back. And that's called curing the gift. So if I get all the money back, that period of ineligibility, because they don't put you in jail if you give money away. They just say, you're just not eligible, and that you're back to paying yourself. So if the person gives the money back, then the period of ineligibility goes away. But see, under the gift and cure, what happens for a single person is, Bill has a stroke, single guy, but he's got a power of attorney, and said, brother, I want you to take care of things if I can't do it. So I have the stroke, my brother Mike, he gets it, and he'll take all the funds and make a gift of all the money over to himself. And again, the power of attorney lets him do it. And then what it does, so there'll be a period of ineligibility, saying, depending on how much I gave away. So for a period of time, Mike's going to be paying back the facility. Just when every month when the bill comes up, he pays. But the way the numbers work out, because of the differential between the state reimbursement rate and the Medicaid reimbursement rate, that's where the 40% comes from. And so when approximately 60% of the money's spent, I file a second application, I'm eligible, that money's in an account, my brother Mike can use it to enhance my care during my lifetime. So, because a lot of people, that's why stereotypes rule this area of the law. They're like, oh, well, grandma's already in the facility and we're already paying for care, there's nothing we can do. I'm like, if you have any money still in the bank, there's something you can do. And if you don't do it, you need to explain. If I was the lawyer on the other side, I'd say, explain to me why you didn't do that. Because your mom could have benefited from that. And why didn't you take the initiative and get the good care for her? And again, some people aren't familiar with that, but the judges that are up, they understand the duty. And so the takeaway is, in every situation where long-term care is required, you can save a substantial portion of money. Maybe you can save all of it. With married couples, I do it all the time. Or maybe it's a single person, we can save 40%. Or Virginia has a little rule. It's a fun one. You can take $20,000 and buy these certain treasury bonds. They don't count. It's like they're invisible. And I'm like, my statement says I got 20. And then we do a POD on it, payable in death, saying, well, Bill dies, it goes to his son, Hayden. But for as far as Medicaid is concerned, it doesn't exist. I'm like, works for me. And and again, the rules vary in jurisdictions. And see, because we're in D.C., Maryland, Virginia, I will forum shop. Because see, Virginia and Maryland, qualified money counts. Your IRAs, 401ks, if you get sick, you got to sell them all off, pay that tax, and then do a spend down with the balance. In the district, IRAs don't count. 401ks don't count. So I've literally said, look, was it worth $500,000 to go across the river? And most clients, yeah, Bill, I'd like to keep my money. Then that's what you did. So because we're not in the middle, because we're not sitting in Richmond in the middle of the state, because we have 3 jurisdictions, there are planning opportunities that just happen to be between jurisdictions. And so, because again, when you get Medicaid, they have a thing called a state recovery. So if I get Medicaid, when I die, they're coming back saying, oh, Bill, we paid all this money. They keep a tab. Joan Marin's the gal down in Richmond. She knows how much they've spent on you. All right. So what happens is that, but if you plan it properly and you title the assets correctly, I take them out of my name and put them in Kate's name, consistent with the rules, they can't recover it. And so a state recovery, with the titling on the different assets, if you review that, you can protect them not only when you're alive, but at passing too. So that then they can benefit the well spouse, and in turn, when he or she passes, the family. So asset protection planning, the starting point is getting an effective financial power of attorney with the ability to make gifts without limits, to say that the people that you choose, if they give a gift to themselves, it's not a breach of their fiduciary duty. That, again, there's no limit on the gifts, and that you may use, that you are permitted to do this planning. Specifically put the language in there, and so then if there's ever a question right here, take a look, page 6, paragraph 4, it's all right there. And again, I've had adult protection services call me. I've just said, I'll email this over, and once you take a look, you just give me a call, tell me what you think. And most of the time, it's like, okay, don't worry about it. We got another case. And because we have authority. So if nothing else, that's what you should take away is get that power of attorney and make sure you get that in place and raise the issue with the parents. Because see, I call the people that are here for parents, it's no longer the sandwich generation anymore. It's the panini generation. Not only are you in a sandwich, you're under pressure, steam pressure from both sides, because you got kids, you got work, you got midlife, you got this, you got health, and then you got mom and dad here, wander around on Route 50, don't know where they are. So the more, because you're going to be the ones that benefit from this by getting the powers of attorney in place. And again, it's an easier approach, as I said before, just to say, look, I want you to make your decisions, Dad. And say, then while you're at it, go ahead and get your estate planning done. But it can make the topic is much easier to approach. And once you have that there, then when the crisis hits, you're like, okay, what can we do? You've got the authority from Dad. You look at the assets, and you go from there. So asset protection planning, that's an overview. I appreciate your time and attention, and I will stay and take questions for as long as you'd like to ask them.